Now, the Obama administration is reportedly expected to announce a new wave of sanctions against Russia for its alleged attempts to influence the November presidential election.
Hacking and leaking that the administration says the Russians carried out during the campaign.
The Obama administration expected to announce it's ready to retaliate against Russia over those hacks that interfered with the presidential election.
The CIA has concluded Russian hackers intervened in the U.S. election with the purpose of helping Donald Trump win.
The Obama administration is reportedly close to announcing sanctions against Russia for interfering in the presidential election.
And while American intelligence agencies continue to blame Russia for the hacks and the leaks that followed during the election season, no concrete proof has been presented on Moscow's involvement. President Obama himself was unable to give a concise answer to questions on the cyber attacks.
Do you believe Vladimir Putin himself authorized the hack, and do you believe he authorized that to help Donald Trump?
I give the intelligence community the chance to gather all the information. But I'd make a larger point, which is not much happens in Russia without Vladimir Putin.
Do you feel any obligation now, as they've been insisting that this isn't the case, to show the proof, as it were? They say put your money where your mouth is and declassify some of the intelligence, some of the evidence that exists.
We will provide evidence that we can safely provide. But I'll be honest with you, when you're talking about cybersecurity, a lot of it is classified, and we're not going to provide it.
Well, so far it is unclear what kind of sanctions are being considered. RT's Alexei Yaroshevsky has been looking into the story.
Unnamed U.S. government officials strike again, this time again informing U.S. media outlets that the White House is contemplating a new set of sanctions against Russia in retaliation to the alleged hacks of the U.S. election. Something we've been hearing a lot, yet to see any solid proof or evidence of that. Nonetheless, according to those officials, there will be diplomatic measures against Moscow. The U.S. officials have also said that the federal government plans some unannounced actions through covert means at the time of its choosing, while public means may be made known as early as this week. We have no idea what these sanctions could be, but for months we've been hearing the allegations that Russia hacked the U.S. election, yet have not seen any proof of that. And even when questions were asked from the White House, the answer was always flat.
Some of that evidence may not be something that we want to show.
When you're talking about cybersecurity, a lot of it is classified, and we're not going to provide it.
WikiLeaks, the whistleblower website which published the revelations about Hillary Clinton's campaign, and particularly its founder, Julian Assange, have flatly denied any allegations that it was part of the campaign. But this whole frenzy and hysteria about the alleged Russian hacking has been going on for months without any evidence presented. But believe it or not, some have actually said that this hysteria was not enough.
The fact that they did not focus on this issue to the extent that we thought they would and they should is something that I think the press needs to do some introspection about.
Again, there's little known, almost nothing known, in fact, about the proposed new sanctions, but Moscow has already reacted through the Foreign Ministry spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova, who said that it seemed that Obama really wanted to spoil relations with Moscow before leaving the office.
The Obama administration distributed these false accusations half a year ago to help their candidate in the November presidential election. As they did not succeed, they are looking for an excuse for this failure, in a way that is damaging to U.S.-Russian relations. The White House needs to understand that if Washington initiates any further hostile actions, there will be a reaction. This includes any hostile actions towards Russian representatives in the U.S., which would immediately trigger consequences for U.S. diplomats in Russia.
Just a timely reminder that the new promise of new sanctions comes just days before President Obama leaves the White House and vacates it for Donald Trump. And there are a lot of questions here in the United States whether these new sanctions would actually live past January 20th.
Well, former US diplomat Jim Trask believes that Obama will impose the sanctions before Trump takes office to hinder any moves to improve ties with Moscow.
I think Obama will do something before he leaves office. Let's remember the president already has very broad legal authorities to impose sanctions, but as Congressman Schiff pointed out, Trump can reverse those authorities. Sure. That if you look at American sanctions law, almost without exception, it authorizes the president to do certain things, but it doesn't require him to do it. So Obama is acting on those authorities. In some cases, arguably, Trump can come in and undo everything Obama is doing right now. It's really more of an attempt to bind him politically more than legally. I think Obama is trying to poison the well as much as possible before Trump gets in.
WikiLeaks editor-in-chief Julian Assange says even a teenager could have hacked the emails of Hillary Clinton's campaign chief, John Podesta. Thousands of emails were published by the whistleblowing website before the presidential election, leading to claims from Washington that Russia was behind it all.
Our source is not the Russian government. And it is not a state party. This is something a 14-year-old kid could have hacked.
Assange gave this interview to Fox News, of course, from the Ecuadorian embassy in London behind me, where he's been holed up for the last 5 years and counting. And the reason that he's talking about a teenager being able to hack into these emails was because, unbelievably, it transpires from the leaked emails that the password to Podesta's account was, in fact, the word password. And he couldn't remember even that. The reason we know it is because one of the leaked emails is from a staffer of his reminding him that his password is password, and also that his username was his own name. There's evidence of him forgetting other passwords too. His Apple ID, for example. He emails staff again to ask them to remind him what it is. He replies to phishing emails, believing them to be genuine on several separate occasions. This is a man who left his phone in a taxi last year. So all in all, he's just not that great with security. And all of this evidence paints a picture of this high-profile guy who cannot seem to be able to maintain even a basic level of security. So it's not hard to go from there to imagining a teenager in the bedroom of his parents' house hacking into this man's emails. The latest on this is that President-elect Donald Trump has reacted to it on Twitter, asking the question on many people's lips, why was the DNC so careless? Assange believes that the reason that these leaked emails had such a wide uptake amongst the American people was because they were all true. But of course, that's not the line that the Obama administration is peddling. And Assange says the reason for that is because they're trying to delegitimize Donald Trump's presidency.
Despite U.S. intelligence officials telling us that digital fingerprints indicate Russia was behind U.S. election cyber attacks, Donald Trump remains skeptical, and this is raising questions about Mr. Trump's ties to Russia, so much so that many are suggesting he's being played by Russia.
They're trying to delegitimize Trump administration, so as it goes into the White House.
Obama's response, as we know, has been pretty severe. Last week, he slapped sanctions on Russia, and he also expelled 35 Russian diplomats. This was all, though, based on a joint report by the FBI and Homeland Security, which we know had a disclaimer on it saying that it was for informational purposes only. Despite Assange's denials and this lack of evidence, the reports of alleged Russian hacking have been doing the rounds on Western media for months now.
We are also following new details on the Russians' motives for hacking and meddling in the U.S. presidential election.
Hacking and leaking that the administration says the Russians carried out.
The CIA has concluded Russian hackers intervened in the U.S. election.
The fact that they did not focus on this issue to the extent that we thought they would and they should is something that I think the press needs to do some introspection about.
Do you believe Vladimir Putin himself authorized the hack, and do you believe he authorized that to help Donald Trump?
I give the intelligence community the chance to gather all the information, but I'd make a larger point, which is not much happens in Russia without Vladimir Putin.
Does the DOD or NSA or any U.S. agency for that matter have any evidence that the Russians, either their agents, operatives, or government, that they hacked into the emails of the Democratic National Committee?
What proof does anyone have that they affected the outcome? Because I've heard zero.
The FBI never looked at the Democratic National Committee's hacked computer servers and yet still accuses Russia of being behind the attack. That's according to an article published online by BuzzFeed News. The DNC's Deputy Communications Director, Eric Walker, reportedly told the online publication that while they met with representatives from the FBI on a number of occasions, the intelligence agency never requested access to the computer servers, the very centerpiece of the investigation. One U.S. official told the site that no government entity has run independent forensic analysis on the DNC's systems. The FBI instead reportedly chose to rely on information outsourced to a third-party tech company known as CrowdStrike. Well, the most recent report released by the FBI again points the finger at Russia for having hacked the DNC. A White House spokesperson was questioned on Wednesday on the lack of proof presented in this document.
Included in that report were specific was specific technical advice. I think it's an indication that the intelligence community is following more than their gut instinct. And I think the way that you can tell that is based on the technical analysis that was put forward. It doesn't mean that there isn't additional evidence out there. I'm sure that there is. But there is a priority that's placed on protecting sources and methods.
It's such a silly, transparent attempt to deflect attention from the real issues. What we know about the NSA and its systems capabilities is that if it was in fact obtained by a Russian government asset, that the NSA would be able to know that very quickly and immediately. It provided absolutely not a shred of evidence that there was in fact a connection between the government of Russia and Julian Assange's outfit right now, who's the one who disseminated those emails.
A new poll conducted in America has shown that inhabitants of major cities are largely disconnected from Americans elsewhere in the country. Caleb Mopan reports.
A new study suggests that people living in urban areas of America, New York, San Francisco, and here in Washington, D.C., live in a kind of bubble that disconnects them from ordinary Americans. We wondered if this also means that they live in a news bubble in which certain information is filtered out. We decided to put our theory to the test here on the streets of Washington, D.C. with a little news quiz of our own. So tell me, true or false, that Russia hacked into a computer system in Vermont and exposed a security breach in the electrical grid? True or false?
I did hear that true. I did hear that was true.
I heard the story. I don't know if it's true, but I did hear the story in the mainstream media.
Gonna go with true on that one. Pretty sure I heard about that in the news.
It's actually false.
All right, I'm gonna go with false on that one.
So who do you think reported that? Was that CNN, Washington Post, or was it a Russian news outlet?
If it's false, I'm gonna go with not CNN or Washington Post. But I don't know why the Russians would want to say that that happened either.
And I believe it was something that came from Donald Trump administration or his office or something.
I think I heard it somewhere like CNN.
It's actually Washington Post that it turned out to be false. So, the Anglo-American school in Moscow was closed down in retaliation for the new sanctions Obama imposed on Russia. True or false?
Sounds false to me.
False.
I think it's true.
Yeah, it turned out to be false. Now, who reported that one? Washington Post, CNN, or was it Russian news?
I'm going to say CNN.
Washington Post?
CNN?
You're right. It was CNN.
Right. Thank you.
Do you feel like people here in D.C. are in a little bit of a news bubble? Like maybe they only hear like one side of the story?
Definitely, yes. Definitely.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The Washington Post, the New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, absolutely. They're the real fake news.
The U.S. often accuses foreign players of trying to misinform the American people. But when news bubbles are popping up in the very cities where American mainstream media is based, perhaps the culprits are a little bit closer to home. Caleb Moppin, RT, Washington, D.C.